Hi you guys, welcome back to my channel. And today we will be talking about Treasure Planet. Now Treasure Planet starts off with the young Jim Hawkins reading a bedtime story about Captain Flint's treasure. And his mother comes in and says, James Party Hawkins, I thought I put you in bed an hour ago. And then Jim says, oh, please, Mom, I was just getting to the best part, please. And then his mom says, oh, can those eyes get any bigger? Scooch over. So they read Captain Flint's story together. Well, honestly, they don't read it. It's like an audiobook 3D type of book, which I think is really cool. So anyway, when they get done reading it, the author says that Captain Flint and his treasure vanished without a trace. So, when that's the end of the book, Jim asks his mom, how do you think he did it, Mom? How do you think he swooped in, collected all his treasure, and vanished without a trace? And the mom says she has no idea. And then Jim asks, Mom, do you think it's real that Captain Flint's treasure is still out there? And then she says, honey, I think it's more of a legend. And then sweet little Jim says, well, I think it's real. And then his mom says, okay, you win, it's real. Now it's time for this little spacer to go to bed. So she tucks him in, helps him help him blow his nose, because I think he had a cold. So she was helping him blow his nose. She put the tissue over his face and said for him to blow his nose. I don't know why I explained that, but anyway, moving on. So, when he tells his mom that he loves her, she says, I love you too. And then he goes under the cover to finish the story, and then we hit 12 years later where Jim Hawkins is where Jim Hawkins is surfing through the sky on a hoverboard that he built himself. But while he is surfing on the planet Montresor, his mother, Sarah, is working at her restaurant. The Bimbo restaurant. And she is taking orders, and she is also friends with the professor named Gilbert. Oh, and I also have to tell you guys, like, on the planet Montresor, there are no humans except for Jim. There are no humans except for Jim and Sarah. The rest of them are creatures. So Gilbert the creature. Okay, I'm glad I got that out of the way. So while they are eating, Gilbert says, well, how is Jim doing? And then Sarah says, much better. I know he had a rough start at the beginning of the year, but I have really come to believe that he has reached a perfect term. reached a good turn. And as soon as she says that, a knock on the door, and it is the robotic officers, and Jim gets caught surfing, and because they caught Jim surfing earlier in the movie, in the beginning of the movie. So the officers tell Sarah and Gilbert, well, Gilbert tries to help a little by trying to get Jim off the hook, but it doesn't work. And for some reason, the officers think that that's Jim's dad. But no, Gilbert's just a friend of the family. So anyway, the officers tell Sarah that if this happens again, he will go to juvenile hall. And Sarah says, "Thank you, officers. This will not happen again." So she tells Jim, "Jim, I have had it. It's hard enough keeping this place afloat without you getting into trouble." And then Jim says, "Mom, it's no big deal. The cops just won't get off my..." "Oh, just forget it." So Jim says, "Oh, just forget it." And 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 Sarah says, "Jim, I just don't want to see you throw away your entire future." And Jim says, "Yeah, what future?" And then, when he is sitting on the roof of their house throwing rocks, Sarah and Gilbert are having a conversation, and Sarah said that she is at the end of her rope, and she just doesn't know what to do, and that she just wishes that Jim would turn into that little boy holding a pet, and then coming home and then begging for her to let him keep the pet. So anyway, while Jim is on the roof, a spaceship comes down, and the person gets injured, and it turns out that the spaceship was shot out of the sky by something. And then this creature named Bones comes out, and he's very, 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 very hurt. So Jim knocks on the door and says, "Hey, mister, you're okay in there, right?" So seeing that the creature is not okay, Jim takes him by the hand and says, "Here, let me try and help you." So Jim takes Bones, that is his name, that is the pirate's name. He takes Bones to his mom, and he says, "Hurry, he'll be coming soon. Beware of the cyborg. Beware of the cyborg." And my chest lad. So Bones the pirate asks for his chest, and he keeps saying, "Beware of the cyborg." So when he opens the chest, it turns out that there is something inside, and Bones tells him not to let the cyborg have it, to protect it, whatever he do to protect it. So, it turned out that the pirates followed Bones to Sarah's restaurant, the Bimbo Inn. They followed Bones there, and they are ripping the restaurant apart, and Jim and his mom and Gilbert, they are just running upstairs, and they are gonna jump out the window. So they call on Delilah, the creature who was attached to the buggy. So they get on Delilah on 3, and then when Sarah looks back, the Bimbo Inn, her home, is on fire. And Sarah begins to cry, and I'm like, oh, poor baby. So I think, okay. So Sarah begins to cry. So I think they took Jim and Sarah. Gilbert took them to the college where he teaches at, because they didn't really say where they were, but Gilbert did check on the inn, and it turned out that it cannot never be prepared. And it turned out that Jim still has the treasure that Bones told him to protect, and it turned out that it's a spear, but if you press it, it's a map. And then you think it's the map of all the planets, right? Wrong. 'Cause this one particular planet is Treasure Planet. So he tells Gilbert and his mom, if we go to Treasure Planet and find the treasure, we can rebuild that inn 100 times better than we built it before. And at first Sarah is hesitated about this. And then Gilbert says, Sarah, may I? You said so yourself. Nothing has worked. What is the harm of Jim going out into space and trying to find Treasure Planet and going on this adventure? And then Sarah says, are you saying this because it's the right thing, or because you really, really want to go? And Gilbert says, I really, really want to go, and it's the right thing. So she agrees, and so on the next scene, they are on a boat with Captain Amelia. And let me just tell you, Captain Amelia is one of my favorite characters from Out of Treasure Planet. Oh my gosh, I just love her. So, she is checking the ship to see if it is ship shape, and she told her right-hand man, Mr. Arrow, that I have checked this ship left and right from top to bottom, and as usual, it is spot on. Can't you get nothing wrong? So she introduces herself to Captain Amelia, and they tell her about the map, but she wants to speak. She wants to speak with Jim. And Dr. Gilbert in her quarters. So they go to her quarters so she can find a place to hide the map. And she also tells them, look, I know that you have the map and everything, but if you mention something about a map and getting rich, these pirates will do anything to get to the treasure first. So zip your lip until we get there. And I'm like, girl, spot on. Like, they are sitting up here talking about how they have a map of Treasure Planet and how they rented the boat and crew and how they rented a boat and crew to take them there. But Amelia says, I do not care for this crew you hired, and you have got to watch your mouth around all these pirates. And so she puts Jim in charge. So she puts Jim with so she puts Jim with Mr. Silver, the cook, and it turns out that he is the cyborg that Bones was talking about. But when Jim asked him about it, he said that he had no idea who Bone was. So it turned out that Jim is really liking sailing, and when he was supposed to be in the kitchen helping Mr. Silver, it turned out that he was on the boat just looking out at the sky. But Silver gives him a job, and he is mopping the deck when he overhears something about getting the treasure from Treasure Planet. So I think he begins to listen, but Mr. Screw Mr. Scroot, a crab, asks Jim, does he have a problem? And Jim says no. Do you have a problem, Bright Eyes? And then he says no, but I think cabin boys should mind their own business. And so he is about to hit Jim, but Mr. Silver takes up for him and he says, Mr. Scroot, what is your problem? Why are you bothering my cabin boy when he is trying to work? So, with that in mind, Mr. Scroop and Silver almost get into it when Mr. Arrow stops them both, and Mr. Silver says, "Thank you, thank you, thank you, Mr. Arrow. Very well done. I couldn't have done it better myself." And then he says, "Jimbo, I gave you a job. Now why aren't you doing it?" He was like, "I was doing it until that bug thing, and this is what and 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 this is when Silver was like, "From now on, I am not taking my eyes off you, not for 1 minute." So we see a montage of them working together, of um of Silver teaching him how uh uh of Silver trying to show him how to tie a knot, how to clean the boats, and we actually get flashbacks of Jim's childhood. Now it turns out that when Jim was 8, his dad left and he never came back. So it turned out that 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 Silver and Jim have created the most beautiful bond I have ever seen. It's so cute. Oh, and the theme song doesn't hurt neither. I'm Still Here, playing on at Jim's flashbacks. I'm Still Here. Oh my god. I have listened to that song so many times on repeat, I cannot even tell you. So anyways, there's the so anyways, it turned out that Captain Amelia is sailing through a black hole, and she tells Jim, "Make sure all lifelines are good and tight." And it turned out that Gilbert actually helps out with telling her uh, about the correct coordinates, and telling actually telling them and actually telling her what they need to do next. So anyways, when they go sailing, they enter the black hole, and Jim does his job and makes sure that all the lifelines are good and tight. Now keep this in mind, cause something is about to happen. So Silver almost falls off the boat, but Jim says, "Silver," and he catches him, and then Silver says, "Thanks, lad." So it turned out that it was a bumpy ride getting through the black hole, and brace yourself for what I'm about to tell you. It turned out that Scroot, the lobster Scroot, cut Mr. Arrow's lifeline when he was trying to climb back up. Because I think Mr. Screw realized what the crew was up to. Okay, let me explain. The crew worked for Silver. And right now, Silver's crew is just playing nice. So when they get to Treasure Planet, they can get the treasure and just be on their merry way. But I think Mr. Arrow, I think that Mr. Arrow found that out the way that Scroot was looking at him and cut his lifeline. So he cut his rope and he just went down, falling to the ground. Well, actually they're in the sky, so I guess he just fell all the way down. And actually, when they make it out, Miss Amelia says, "Are all heads are all heads accounted for, Mr. Arrow?" Mr. Arrow? And then the crab who cut the lifeline comes to the captain and says, "I'm afraid that Mr. Arrow has been lost to us. His lifeline wasn't secure." And then, and then Jim says, "No, I checked them all. I swear, I tied it down." And then Captain Amelia just looks at him like she is so disappointed in him. And and I should bring up one more thing. There's this little creature named Morph, who is a shapeshifter, and who is friends with and who is friends with Silver. And I'm just telling you, he is the most cutest thing ever. So anyway, with that in mind, Jim is sitting out on the boat wondering, how could he do this? How could he not tie it down? And then and then and 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 then he tells Silver, "Don't you get it? I screwed up. For once in my life, I thought I could do something right, but when it comes to it, I can't." And then and then Silver tells him, "Now you listen to me, James Hawkins. You got the makings of greatness in you. You just have to let it out. And when you do, I hope I can see the light coming off of your sails. You are gonna rattle the stars, you are." And that right there to me was like such a speech. And like, Jim gives Silver a hug, and then he tells Jim, "Look, I have to get back to watch, and you best be getting some shut-eye." So Jim is about to leave, But then he looks back, and then Silver and him are smiling at each other for that wonderful fatherly talk that they had. Oh my God, that line! You got the making of greatness in you. That just hits me. It just hits me. It hits me right here. Like, Disney knew what they were doing when they wrote this movie. They know what they were doing. Okay. So, it turned out that Mr. Root, the crab, was listening to the whole conversation. So the next morning, Morph is playing with Jim, and when he finds Morph, he starts to tickle him, and he listens to him giggle. But then he hears the conversation between Mr. Scrooge and Arrow, and Mr. Scrooge says, I don't think you want to find Treasure Planet and get the treasure. You know what I think? It's that boy. I think that you have a soft spot for him. And then Mr. Silver says, I do not have a soft spot for Jim Hawkins. I just cozied up to that boy to get him off our scent. So do you guys get it now? They are actually working for Silver when they pretended to be a crew. The plan was to steal the boat and to go to Treasure Planet. But they had to lie low. But now that they're closer, the true colors are coming out for them. So Jim overhears this, and he is just so surprised and so devastated because he really thought that Silver believed in him and that Silver was his friend. But that is all cut short when they reach land, and Silver goes back for his glass, and then it turned out that Jim is there too, and he has his glass, and then Silver says, Jimbo, what are you doing down here? Playing games? And then Jim is like, yeah, playing games. And Silver says, well, I wasn't so good at games. I always lost at games. And then Jim finds out what Silver is trying to do. So he hits him in his robotic leg, and then he starts to run away. But Silver catches him with his eye, but he knows that he can't really hurt Jim because Jim is his friend. So, with Silver getting mad at Jim, Silver says, change of plans, everyone. We've moved now. So they take over the ship. And the captain is all ready to unload to shoot. The captain is all ready and loaded. She is ready to fight. And she asked the doctor, is he familiar with the weapon that she gave to him? And he says, no, not really. And then Captain Amelia in her hideout, before Silver can get to her, she gives Jim the map and says, Mr. Hawkins, guard this with your life. And then it turned out that it's Morph, and he's trying to grab the map from Jim, but he also tells Morph to let go. So we thought Morph let go, so just keep that in mind, keep that in mind. So, when Silver comes in the secret hideaway place where Captain Amelia is in Jim and Gilbert, they have already escaped in the boat that they have for safekeeping. So they already escaped on a boat. And so they made it to the other halfway of the island. And Silver is following them because Silver knows that they still have the map. So it turned out they do make it to a safe place. And they meet this robot named Ben, who lets them stay at his house for a while the captain heals because she got hurt in the fight trying to fight the pirates off. But I gotta give it to my boy Gilbert over here, cause he protected them by hitting another weapon with the weapon that he had on, with a weapon that he had on him, and when he hit the other weapon, it ended up blasting one of the pirates away. And Amelia says, "Did you actually aim for that?" And Gilbert says, "Actually I did." And Gilbert tries to help her by helping her bandage her wounds and telling her to rest. And Captain Amelia tells him, "Doctor, you have the most wonderful eyes." And and it turned so it turned out that Ben the robot one of my second favorite characters is missing his brain. Because he's a robot, he is missing the back of his memory circuit piece. So he also forgets stuff a lot. But he's the most sweetest robot. But okay. So So, that it turned out that Captain Silver has found them because he thinks that they still have the map. So he found him. So he found them at the other side of the island, and he says, "Jimbo, if we can just have a talk." So Silver says, "Listen, what you heard back there, none of that is true. I just wanted you to know that none of that is true. That I think the world of you, Jim. In fact, if you give me the map, half of the treasure is yours." And 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 Jim says, "You know, you're really something. All that stuff about the light coming off of my sails and all this, well, I'm gonna make sure the lights come off of my sails when I find the treasure. And you are not getting one doubloon of my treasure." And then he says, "Fine. But if I don't have that map by noon tomorrow, so help me, I will blast ya all to Kingdom Come." And it turns out that the map is actually and it turns out that the map is still on the ship. And the map that they thought they were carrying when the captain asked to see it when they got to safety was Mort. And that and the real map is still back on the ship, hiding under a rope. But Silver doesn't know that. So while Captain Amelia and Gilbert are resting, and Gilbert is up and walking and telling Jim, "Oh, Jim, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? What?" What are we gonna do? And I don't even know if Captain Amelia is gonna be okay because I'm not a doctor. I mean, I am a doctor, but I'm not a doctor, and a doctor is not the same thing. And then Jim hugs Gilbert and says, "It's gonna be okay. I got a plan." So he actually goes underground to where Ben gets his sunshine, right? He actually goes underground, and he actually goes back to the ship to get the map. But Mr. Scroot is there. But Mr. Scroot is there. And he tries to get the map from Jim. And then Mr. Scroot says, "Please give my regards to Mr. Arrow." And then Jim says, "Well, tell him yourself," as he adds as Jim covers him with the flag from the ship. And then he escaped, and and then and and then after that, Mr. Scroop falls down, and then he goes back on the ship, but Mr. Silver and Captain Amelia and Gilbert have all been captured. And when Jim says, I got the map, Gilbert, Captain Amelia, wake up, I got the map. And Silver says, do you now? Well, thanks, Jimbo. This will make it a whole lot easier. So, the plan is now that he the plan is now for Silver. He took Jim and Captain Amelia and Gilbert hostage. And Ben. He took my favorite character, Ben, hostage along with Captain Amelia. Anyway, back to the movie. So now they are going to where the treasure is buried, or so they think. But then the orbit stops glowing, and Jim actually finds out that what if it's not buried underneath? What if this whole island is the mechanism to the treasure? So there is a spot in the ground where the map goes. So Jim plugs it in, and then he sees all these doors open from different planets. And then Jim goes on to say that Flint didn't want anyone to know where the treasure was buried, so he stashed it somewhere safe. And then Silver says, well, where'd he stash it all? And then Jim says, in the eye. So it turns out that he did bury the treasure in outer space, and they find it, and everybody's like so happy they found it. But Jim and Ben make an escape. Oh, I forgot to tell you. Ben was also on the ship when Jim escaped, and he was playing with wires to the ship's electricity, and then that's what caught Mr. Scroop's eye when Ben accidentally turned the lights on. But he defeated Mr. Scroop, so I just wanted to tell you guys that Ben was with Jimmy when he escaped to go get the map. So anyway, now that everyone has gotten the treasure and everything, they left Captain Amelia and Gilbert tied up. And Gilbert says, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have got you. I shouldn't have gotten you captured. And then Captain Amelia says, "Oh, don't be so hard on yourself. If it wasn't for you, I, I, I wouldn't have never made it this far." So, it turned out that Gilbert, while everybody was off finding the treasure, and Jim is finding a way to escape with Ben, while everybody's distracted by looking for the treasure. So, Gilbert actually calls the guards that are watching him names, and then it turned out that Gilbert was untied all along because they didn't tie the knots up tight, and then the guard that's guarding him says, "Hey, if you say one more word about me, I will make sure that you pay for it." And then Gilbert says, I am sure you will. But I have one question. Is this weapon yours?" And so Amelia and Gilbert escape together. So when that is happening, Jim and Ben the robot are gathering up treasure and finding a boat where they can ship off to go. And are gathering up treasure and finding a boat where they can ship off and go home, right? And then they find Captain Flint's, and then they find Captain Flint's skeleton. And in Captain Flint's skeleton, he is actually holding Ben's brain. Well, his memory circuit, to be precise. His memory circuit. So when Jim actually helps Ben uncover his mind. Okay. So let me explain. Ben is a robot that used to work for Captain Flint. But back then, he didn't want Ben to tell anyone about the treasure or the secret hiding place. So he took his memory circuit out, and Jim actually put it back together. So he told Jim that Captain Flint took my memory circuit out because he didn't want anyone to find his treasure or to tell anybody about his booby traps. And that's when Jim gets the information that if they don't get off of this island soon, the whole place is gonna blow up. So they tried to run off and find some safety, and he tried to tell everybody, but nobody wants to listen. And it actually, okay. So and K. Jim actually tries to tell Silver that the whole place is going to blow up if you don't get out of here and let go of the treasure. And then Silver says, I liked you, lad, I really did, but I can't let you get between me and my treasure. So, while he is trying to push Jim off, it does actually work. Jim actually goes to the edge and he's almost about to fall. And Silver tries to hold on to him in the treasure, but he can't. And then Silver lets go of the treasure and grabs Jim. And then Jim says, Silver, you let go of the treasure. And then Silver says, oh, it was a long, lad, it was a long obsession. I'll get over it. So it turns out that Ben actually found the boat with the captain and Gilbert, and he says, Jim gave him instructions. If I'm not back in 5 seconds, leave without me. But they don't have to leave without him because Jim made it. But the problem is that they have to open a different door to get out of there before the island explodes. So Captain Amelia tells him that you're nuts, we can't open another door. And then Silver sees what he is talking about. If they could just touch the map again from outer space. This is the map from outer space now. If they could just touch the green map from outer space again, he could surf to the edge of the island, press the button, and then get them all out of there. And then Amelia said, you're crazy, but Silver says, listen to the boy. Whoa. But Silver says, listen to the boy. What do you need, Jimbo? And then Jim says, I need something to attach this. So he's gonna surface. So he is going to surf his way to the end of the island and press the button. So he is surfing his way through to get to that button, to actually get to that button, while Ben is actually counting down how many minutes they have, and Silver and the rest of the audience is saying to themselves, come on, Jimmy, you can make it, Jim. And so he actually makes it, and he opens another door, and he actually opens another door, and they are actually safe. And then Ben hugs him, but remember when I told you when Ben first met Jim that he didn't really like him and he didn't really like hugs that much? Well, Jim actually hugs him back. Or maybe I didn't tell you guys that. Okay, so when Jim first met Ben, he didn't really like him all that much. And he didn't really like hugs all that much neither from Ben. But he actually hugs Jim back when he actually hugs Ben back when they make it safe and sound through the portal. And when they stop the island from exploding. And Captain Amelia says, "That was good work, Mr. Hawkins. I am going to tell the Space Academy about you, and you will have a free scholarship to go there." So, Jim and everybody is happy because they made it back home. And Amelia and Gilbert, they end up hugging twice. And Silver is about to escape, but then he says one goodbye to Jim. He says one more goodbye to Jim, and he offers Jim a job as his mate to go sailing around the world with him. And then, but then Jim says, "No, I think I'm gonna stick around here. An old cyborg told me to stick to it and to make a change if I want to. So that's what I'm gonna do." And so they hug for one last time, and Morph begins to cry because he doesn't want to leave Jim. But Silver gives Morph a job, and he says, "Morph, keep an eye on Jimbo for me." So Morph ends up staying with Jim, and then Silver ends up escaping, but not before he gives Jim half of the treasure, and he says, "That's for your dear mother, to fix up that old inn of hers." And then Jim says, "Thanks, now stay out of trouble." And then Silver and and then Silver says, "Jimbo, when have I ever done that?" So Jim is back home with Morph, and Ben the robot actually came with them, and he's helping out at the restaurant, and they are all having a party and celebrating that Jim has got a scholarship to the school and having a dance party. And then he sees Silver's reflection in the clouds. And then he smiles. Oh, and also, Captain Amelia and Gilbert had babies, and now they are married. And that is the end of Treasure Planet. Bye, and see you guys in my next video. Bye.